the 16th edition of the LoJoWo podcast. I'm recording this on Wednesday, September 16th. So obviously we're going to be talking about the craziness that ensued in the games last night, namely the Clippers collapse and the Nuggets advancing to the Western Conference Finals, as well as a really entertaining Miami-Boston Game 1 in the Eastern Conference Finals that had a very thrilling ending, just really entertaining throughout. We're going to talk about both of those, and we'll also look forward to the Western Conference Finals, talk about Nuggets versus Lakers, since that is the reality we're living in now. That it's not a dream. That's actually happening. Nuggets are facing the Lakers in the Western Conference Finals. So, yeah, we'll get to all that and even more. I've been touching on all of the season awards throughout my episodes, so we're going to continue with that. Kind of since I made predictions and kind of my own picks, and who I thought should and who I thought kind of will, kind of combination of those. Win each award, and I've been really accurate thus far, I'd like to say. I was close with the Brandon Ingram one, really close. I basically picked him. If you want to know more about that, listen to the last episode or the one where I talked about that award to understand what I'm talking about. But and then really the Montrezl Harrell one was the first one that was like legitimately not the guy I picked, but I did talk about him in the episode that I did, and I said for my prediction it had to be either him or the guy I picked, which was Dennis Schroeder. And I said, I could definitely see them giving it to Harrell, him winning the award, but personally I would probably choose Schroeder just because of the minutes that he played on his team. He played like substantially more minutes per game, and just I think had a bigger role on his team. In what they accomplished, the Thunder accomplished this season. So he would have been my pick personally, but I wasn't really too mad about Harrell. He was a legitimate candidate for sure. So I had those were my two real misses. All the other ones were complete chalk. Even in like the order of the voting for like Defensive Player of the Year, I got all five. The top five were the same order that I had my guys listed. And then all defensive teams, I had all of them the same, other than the two guards on the second team were not who I had on there. I had Jimmy Butler and Drew Holiday. They had Patrick Beverley and who else did they have on there? I don't even remember. Oh, Eric Bledsoe. Obviously. Okay, yeah. Forgot about Bledsoe. Yeah, so I mean, not too, like, they weren't terrible candidates, but not who I had. I thought Drew Holiday and Jimmy Butler really should have been the guys on there. But yeah, so we'll continue looking at season awards. Probably do that at the end of the episode. The two things that we're going to be looking at is the all NBA teams that got released just today, I think, and then the all rookie teams that were just the other day. So, or maybe that was also today. I don't really know, but yeah, we're going to look at both of those though. And talk about who my picks were, if I can remember them. I should probably write this stuff down, but I'll probably just go off the top of my head on what I remember. And if you guys want proof to like fact check me, if you're really that invested in this podcast series, then you can go back through and listen to the episode that I did when I talked about these awards. So yeah, but yeah, I'll save that for the end, even though I already had a really long spiel talking about this at the top of the episode, which probably shouldn't have. But yeah. Nuggets and Clippers game last night was a very interesting Game 7. I've never seen a team completely collapse the way they did. Well, okay, I shouldn't say that. It's definitely probably happened before, but not a team this good. Like a team that just a few weeks ago was probably the consensus number one pick. Like going into the playoffs, more people were scared off of the Lakers than they were the Clippers, I think. And Bucks, there's always been a lot of doubts with the Bucks. I feel like Clippers was really the most consensus of like number one pick for just everybody combined. That would have been the favorite, and it's just kind of crazy that they've continued their franchise's horrible luck of now, I believe this is the 50th year straight that they've been a team in existence that they haven't made a conference final. So they've never made it, and so they're obviously on a streak of 50 years. I think the only other franchise that's never won, or I think there's been a couple, but most of them aren't as old as the Clippers are, because the Clippers date back to all the way back when they were still the Braves. Yeah, very unlucky franchise, and it's kind of crazy to see them having an entire different squad now, and that bad luck continuing. I don't think they have anybody. I don't think they have anybody from that previous team, that 2015 team that gave up a 3-1 lead to the Rockets. Yeah, I don't think there's been anybody since then that's still on the team. The only constant really is, and a lot of people have pointed this out already that I've seen, is Doc Rivers, the head coach, who apparently this is his third collapse from allowing a team to come back from a 3-1 deficit against him, losing a 3-1 lead. This is his third time doing that, and no other coach in NBA history has more than one. And this is only the 13th time that a team has ever come back from a 3-1 deficit. And the Nuggets have actually done it, I think, the 11th, 12th, and 13th time. Because if I'm not mistaken, we were down, I believe, 3-1 last season to the Spurs in round 1. And we came back from that. I might be wrong on that, but I'm pretty sure that's what it was. And then we were down 3-1 to Utah, obviously, in this postseason, in the first round. Came back from that. And now we just had this series. So we're the 11th, 12th, and 13th team to achieve that. And the first ever to achieve 2 3-1 comebacks in the same season. And like I said last episode, this was our 4th straight Game 7, which is the most ever by a team. A lot of records being broken in this postseason by the Nuggets, with obviously Jamal Murray and Donovan Mitchell in that first series having just unprecedented scoring outings, and then this, and also Jokic getting the fastest triple-double in a Game 7, and the only player besides, I think it was KG and Hakeem, maybe? I saw the list earlier. I can't remember. But it was like KG and Hakeem, or KG and Duncan, or somebody like that, for the first players to have 20 boards in a Game 7. And I'm guessing he's probably the only player to have a 20-rebound triple-double in a Game 7. I doubt that that's happened before. But, yeah, so a really good game for Jokic. It was kind of weird that they were kind of playing it right into his hands. I really like, as a Nuggets fan, I really like watching teams, when our opposing teams try to double Jokic, just because it might throw him off at first. It might be surprising and kind of rough right out the gate, as it was just last night. In the first quarter was a little bit that he had to adjust to right at first, but once he gets used to it, he knows what's happening. When he catches at the elbow, he knows who's coming at him and who's going to be open, and he loves to make that pass. Like, one of the Jokic's biggest weaknesses on the offensive end of the floor is his unwillingness to score sometimes, because he's always looking for the pass. He's always looking for the assist. He's like almost too unselfish sometimes. And that was the thing last series. With the Jazz, how they weren't doubling him at all, they were just having Gobert play him straight up. I think Mike Malone was kind of telling him, stop looking for the pass, just play aggressively to score. Just think score, that's your first option. And that's really what we saw last series. Was he had a lot less assists than he usually does last series, just because he was hunting for the basket every time that he caught the ball. Really, he was looking for the mid-range jump shot, or getting inside and scoring with finesse around the 7-1 behemoth that Rudy Gobert is. But yeah, so it was pretty. I was just kind of happy when I saw it happening in the first quarter, because I was are they just going to do this the whole game? Have they not like I don't understand that adjustment that they make just like for a game 7. They just decide, hey, this guy's been scoring on us a lot, getting Zubats in foul trouble. Let's just double him every time. I don't know. I just thought that was one of the worst moves. You should have just made him beat you. Like that would probably be the better option with a defender like Zubats. Like Zubats is a solid defender, a solid guy matching up against Jokic. Like he was making it pretty hard on Jokic throughout the series. Jokic was just making really tough shots, and like you should make him have to make those tough shots to beat you, not just let him find guys for open layups and corner threes. Like I don't know. That's what I feel like, but I'm really happy that they did that, and I'm really hoping the Lakers decide to do that too. I think, if you're a Lakers fan or somebody associated with the Lakers listening to this, I think that's the best move to do on Jokic, is to just double him in the post every time. He is an overrated passer. He can't really make those reads. And if you just swarm him, he loses his cool. He gets very flustered. He's never calm and collected. He'll panic and you'll get him throwing some turnovers and all that kind of stuff. So that's probably your best move. Let's fingers crossed that makes it out there and somebody uses that. but yeah, Jamal Murray had a fantastic game, which I wasn't expecting. I think I said, though, I don't remember, in my last episode leading up to that game, I was like praying that Murray would have another really good night in Game 7, and that is what happened. And I do believe the last time I actually said that in the Utah series, so I said it after Game 3, after we got destroyed by 30 against the Jazz, and they were just destroying Jokic in the pick and roll over and over. I said it after, Murray had a 36-point game in Game 1, and then he had 12 and a 14 game right after that for his Game 2 and 3. And then that's when I was like, let's pray that Murray has some more games like Game 1. And then that very next game, Game 4, is when he scored 50. And then he had 42 the next game, and then another 50 in Game 7, or in Game 6. And then, obviously, he only had 17 or 19 in Game 7, but that was a rock fight. Ended I think we had 80 or 82 points in one. So, not a lot of scoring in that game, but still, I need to be conservative on when I call upon the summoning of the Jamal Murray game. Now that I know that it is a power play, that it is a card I can pull, I'm gonna save it just to make sure we don't run out. So yeah, I'm looking out for fellow Nuggets fans in that way. Yeah, I'll try to make sure I use it at the right time. And going back to Doc Rivers, a lot of people kind of been talking about how it's for him to blame, which obviously some of it has to be. I've heard stuff talked about Doc Rivers the past couple years, on how good of a coach he really is. I believe that he's a solid coach. I think that his strength really lies in being that motivator, that guy that is kind of lets the stars go out and do things. He's not much of an X's and O's guy, it seems like, especially just with this series. I think was a lot of proof of that. Really not making the adjustments he needed to make with bringing Harrell and Lou Williams off the floor when they were just getting absolutely destroyed every time they were in there, and not really providing too much scoring for the most part. They should have been playing limited minutes when, their plus minus is off the charts bad in that series. And he did not do that at all. He played Lou Williams and Montrezl Harrell, I think even more minutes in Game 7, if I'm not mistaken, or at least the same amount. And he just had him really a part of the rotation and closing games basically the whole time. So that was odd and confusing. And then in Game 7 he makes that adjustment to double Jokic, and that didn't work for them at all. And they just kept going with it. And gave him 13 assists, which he really could have had more that game. I think there was quite a few where he passed it to a guy that got fouled at the basket, or guys that just were not hitting their threes, which as a Nuggets fan I've had to deal with past 2 seasons now. pretty streaky shooters on the Nuggets squad, but guys like Torrey Craig and Gary Harris, it really comes and goes for them. Same with Jeremy Grant and Paul Millsap. But yeah, and you saw it earlier this series. Jeremy Grant I think he was a couple games in a row, like 1 for 6, like 0 for 5. Those types of games from three. So glad that enough of them went in, and we won by a pretty substantial amount last night. But yeah, with Doc Rivers, I don't know how much of the blame should be on him. I think that some of it definitely, especially when you're looking at this record with how he's performed now in closeout games, and also just with X's and O's adjustments. I've heard rumors of him being traded again. Doc Rivers, I'm sure there's been other coaches that have been traded. I just can't really think of any off the top of my head. Doc Rivers was really the first one that I even knew that was a thing, that coaches could be traded in the NBA. But yeah, he got traded to the Clippers, I think, for just cash and maybe some picks or something, or maybe like one pick. I don't know what it was. And then the Celtics hired Brad Stevens. But I've heard them talk about maybe him being traded to Philadelphia, which I think would be interesting. I just don't know. I don't know what Doc Rivers is as a coach anymore. I don't really know. I know that he gives very, very energetic and moving speeches and really gets to I think his words get through to his players a lot. I think his players really respect him on a level that's different than a lot of coaches. He just earns respect from his players from where he's been before as a player and as a coach. And also, he just has a way with motivating his players. But yeah, as far as an X's and O's game, I don't know what he is as a coach, really, just from past evidence. But yeah, there's been talk of him getting moved, I guess, and talk of maybe Ty Lue being promoted as that head coach, which I think would be pretty good. When Ty Lue got put into place with Cleveland, I think that was really the best situation for him. He had the stars to work with, and he also was not reluctant to make adjustments. He would make adjustments really quickly, which is, I think, always good, especially in this modern era. And that might be what the Clippers need. So that'd be interesting to see. But then, continuing with coaches a little bit, there's been talk of also Mike D'Antoni going to Philadelphia or going to New Orleans, which I think New Orleans sounds really interesting for Mike D'Antoni. Just Zion would probably be playing the 5, permanently. It's probably where we'd be seeing him. Jackson Hayes and Okafor, and I guess Derek Favors is still there. Those guys will probably be getting minutes still, but you'll probably see a lot of Giannis or a lot of Zion at the 5. I think he could revolutionize Lonzo's game. We've seen in the past, just with Mike D'Antoni, taking players that had a lot of potential but didn't pan out other places, didn't pan out in different systems, and really just optimizes them, gives them, they have their career years under him. He took Steve Nash from being what he was in Dallas, which was a promising young player, but really just couldn't elevate to that next level, and really just optimized the heck out of what Steve Nash's skill set was. And it would be interesting to see that type of thing with Lonzo. Lonzo draws a lot of comparisons to a bigger Jason Kidd, a little bit bigger Jason Kidd. And so, yeah, it would be interesting to see what Mike D'Antoni would do with Lonzo Ball, and the rest of that team. They also have Brandon Ingram and Josh Hart and JJ Redick still. A lot of those guys. So, yeah, it'd be interesting to see. But yeah, the Clippers. I'm gonna go back to the Nuggets game. The Clippers really, honestly, the Nuggets got really lucky with the Clippers choke job that they really executed the past 3 games, giving up huge leads. I'm not taking any credit away from the Nuggets. Really, the Nuggets played really well when they were down. The Clippers just didn't have any response. I heard it talked about Kawhi Kawhi had a bad game last night. I'm not gonna say he didn't, but um, yeah, I don't know. It's weird what he did in Toronto. Toronto is just a different team built around him. On paper, Clippers around him should be better, just with like the type of talent you have there. Have lots of different ways you can roll out squads, roll out different units, and get stuff done. But in Toronto, they had just solid guys that can defend and that can hit shots, just built around one guy named Kawhi Leonard that can post up at the elbow, and in the mid range, like nobody we've seen other than Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant. In crunch time in playoff games last season, he had an incredible run. Like people, I don't want people to forget that. That they see him in the last game in this series and think that he is not one of the top players in the NBA. I think he still is. He is definitely, definitely this should raise some concerns in where we rank him as number one. Coming into this series, I thought he was probably number one that you would want in a playoff series. And, that skill set's still there. He was getting really good shots. They really just weren't falling. And I think that was the main reason he wanted to come to this team and wanted Paul George on this squad to begin with at the start of this season, was because, he didn't want to have another year like he just had in Toronto, where he had to take all of those shots that he took and had to make, all the shots that he made to really pull it off. He wanted another guy that can take over when it's like stuff's not falling for him. And sadly, Paul George, more times than not this postseason, stuff was not falling for him either. And yeah, Paul George was just really, it's not that he wasn't playing aggressively or anything like that. He was taking shots and getting good looks, just like I said with Kawhi. It really was kind of ghostly and eerie how both of them, Kawhi for most of the playoffs was really consistent, getting 30 balls every night. But yeah, Paul George had a few really good games. The rest of them were just like, I don't know. Nothing really changed other than the fact that the ball wasn't going through the net. Like he was still getting to the same spots, taking the same shots is really what it seemed like. But it's weird how it just kept happening like that. But you'd think after a while luck would start to turn for him, and it did there for a little while. But yeah, I don't know. And then what was weird on top of that was Lou Williams had the same type of game last night. Even though he played all those minutes, being such a liability for them on the defensive end, he really, for him to be worth it being in there, he needs to be scoring. But he only scored 7 points last night. He only shot like 27%, just like Kawhi and Paul George. So it was weird that their three best options in isolation were just not making shots. Montrezl Harrell was making some shots, but he was also a liability on the defensive end, and he's not a number one option on offense. So, yeah, it was weird. It was just a weird night, weird game. But I'm happy and sad at the same time. Like I'm sad that this, because I like Kawhi, I like Paul George, I like both their games. I'm sad that this had to go on their legacy. In this way, people already have been talking so much crap to these guys, especially Lakers fans that I've seen, that I know in real life, but like that I've seen just saying stuff like Clippers belong in the G League and all of this kind of like really bad stuff. Like most GMs would still max Paul George tomorrow. Like if he was a free agent, most GMs would still give him the max tomorrow. That's how good of a player Paul George is. I don't want people to forget about. He was third in MVP voting last season, and third in Defensive Player of the Year voting last season. He was a first team All-NBA and All-Defense last season. So this guy is a superstar level player. One of the best, probably the best 3-and-D player in the league. Kawhi is probably up there too, but I think Paul George is throughout his career, throughout the past few seasons, Paul George has definitely been the better 3-point shooter. So I don't know. And Kawhi's still Kawhi, but yeah, it was weird. I think a lot of what you saw was, Nuggets. I think I said this last episode too, that Nuggets have cohesion. They're playing as a unit because they've been together. They've been together for like years upon years now. For a lot of these guys, they've been here 4 or 5 plus years. Um, around that, and so with the Clippers, you got a lot of new faces. Zubats was last season was his first season, I think. Harrell and Lou have only been there 2-3 years. Um, like Shamit came over last season in that Tobias Harris trade. They lost Gallo and Shea for Paul George. They have Kawhi. Patrick Beverley's been there the same amount of time Harrell has. I think they both got there at the same time in the Chris Paul trade. So they haven't been even the guys that have been there the longest have not been there long of all the rotation players. Rodney McGruder really doesn't play much, but he was new just last season, I think. Marcus Morris, they just got him at the trade deadline. So yeah, and he was starting a lot of games. So I think it's a lot of that. You don't see when Doc Rivers is a coach that's more of a motivator and not much of a schematics and play calling kind of guy. I think that's what you see. You see them lacking in terms of chemistry, and especially with this whole season, a lot of the guys in the main rotation not playing the same games as the other guys because they were coasting through the season, having load management. A few guys got injured, stuff like that, and not really even. Maybe it looks different if they, because their whole plan the whole season, from what I heard people saying, was like they're taking it easy the first part of the season and then dialing it up the last half. That's really in the last half after the All-Star break is when they jumped ahead of the Nuggets in the standings and got to the 2 seed. I think that's what they were banking on, was really turn it up in the last part of the season and leading in, using that momentum to go in the playoffs, because most teams do it the opposite way. They like to start the season strong and in like March, April, kind of take it easy, rest guys before the playoffs start. I think the Clippers were really banking on that strategy of going the other way around, and then COVID happened where everybody had to stop. And so they really didn't have that stretch where they were really using their lineups, really utilizing ideas and things that like they were going to use in the playoffs, and guys playing together. And I think chemistry is a big deal on a team like the Clippers because so much of what they do is just 5 out. It's like they don't run offenses for the most part. They're like, it's utilizing the stars. It's kind of like what they do in Houston for the most part. It's like you give one guy the ball and let him do stuff, let him cook. Really the only offenses I see them run very often is like just pick and roll, and that's Lou Williams and Montrezl Harrell. They'll run pick and roll. Other than that, it's like, Paul George catch it on the wing, drive, do something like that. Kawhi catching it at the perimeter and posting up to the elbows, shooting mid-range shots. That's like their thing. But when you're kind of alone out there, when you don't know, you're not super familiar with the way the other guys play off you, and that can cause some problems for sure when trying to really do the best that you can, especially in a playoff series. So that's probably a lot of what really went into their demise, whatever you want to call it. But yeah, sad. I'm sad for the Clippers. Honestly, I feel bad for them with how much bad luck they've had. They're probably the most unlucky franchise in NBA history so far, I'd say. Sorry if I'm forgetting anybody like the Knicks, but got to be them, one of them too. But the Knicks have had championships. Let's not forget that. Knicks have had bright years. Clippers have had bright stretches where they should have won, but they lost way before they were supposed to every time. Namely the early 2000s or the early 2010s, to mid 2010s. Lob Angeles Clippers, Lob City Clippers, with Chris Paul and Blake Griffin and DeAndre Jordan, Jamal Crawford, JJ Redick, Matt Barnes, all those guys. So yeah, I feel bad for them, but being a Nuggets fan, obviously very happy to see them going to the Western Conference Finals. This is something that I talked about in, I think, my very first episode that I uploaded on this channel. Part of it was about that I wanted Nuggets to win a conference or get to the conference championship, get to the conference finals. That was like my goal for the Nuggets this season. And so that was cool. That's cool that it happened. And, after that Clippers series, I guess anything is possible. Looking forward to the Lakers. Obviously, I'm a bit scared going up against the Lakers. And also, I should point out, this was the first series that I was actually wrong on who I thought was going to win going into it. Because, I picked... the only one I might be unsure about, I'm pretty sure I picked the Rockets in round 1, like before the series started. I kind of gave new picks after every game, like talked about what I thought might happen, but like what I'm going off by is like before the series started, what my pick was, and I'm pretty positive I picked the Rockets going into it, but I was really iffy. It could go either way on that one. But yeah, I picked the victor, the correct one in every series so far. Where that really started to feel good for me was in the Eastern Conference semifinals with Celtics versus Raptors, and obviously Heat versus Bucks. But yeah, this is the first one I'm wrong about, was Nuggets Clippers, but I'm okay with that. Obviously, that's good. If if the Nuggets ones are the ones I'm wrong about, I'm okay with that. I'll be totally fine with that. But yeah, going up against the Lakers, I want to pick the Nuggets, but for predictions' sake, I'm gonna just have to go with the Lakers. Like I can't be biased. I'm sorry. It's like I don't have a bias part of me where I'm going to just deny logic and stuff. Like there's a way for the Nuggets to win for sure, but like what's more likely? I think the Lakers for them to win. So that's gonna be my pick. And ways that I can see them winning. A lot of people have been talking about, from what I've heard, which I haven't heard much yet, but is that Anthony Davis is going to eat up Jokic in the post or something like that. And I just want to point out to everybody, like, okay, I hear a lot of analysts talk about the Nuggets, especially recently with the spotlight that's been on them, and I just realized how guys that don't watch my team for like all year, what they don't know, and they say things that they just don't know what they're talking about sometimes. Like I hear so many people recently, especially after the Jazz series, just calling Jokic a bum on defense and calling him worthless and things like that. When I know, when the right lineups are out there and when in the right situations, Jokic can be actually a pretty effective defender. Like he does very positive things on the defensive end of the floor. One of those things being, I don't know if anybody else knows this, but when the Nuggets and the Sixers go up against each other, and what the argument for the past 2 seasons has been, Jokic versus Embiid, who's the best center in the NBA. Head-to-head matchups, Jokic wins, like basically every time. I don't care what my friend Anthony says. I don't know what games he's watched before, but Jokic wins those battles. Like, and that's just because Jokic is actually I would say a very solid post defender in the fact that he's guarding the post up. Somebody trying to back him down and score over him. He doesn't let that happen very often. I think he's really good at staying vertical, not obviously jumping in the air, but keeping his arms straight and holding his ground. And he was showing it this series against Zubats, and he was showing it last series against Gobert whenever Gobert was back to the basket. And but one thing to take note of throughout the seasons has been Jokic does super well. Jokic wins the battle against Embiid, and Embiid wins the battle, and then Jokic loses the battle against Karl Anthony Towns, and Embiid pummels Karl Anthony Towns, because Embiid is much more of a powerhouse, posting up, back you down, score over you, dunk over you, and make you feel bad for trying. That's what he likes to do. And Karl Anthony Towns is pretty flimsy for a center, does not hold his ground super well. So that's really what you see. That's like the advantage Jokic has over him, is he'll back him down and score over him. But Karl Anthony Towns is longer than Embiid is, and so he can bother his shot a bit more than Embiid can, I would say. But also Jokic doesn't need to back you down. Like with Embiid, when he tries backing him down, he can still score over him with like crazy weird hooks and floaters and turnarounds and things like that. He's good at scoring once he's like Jokic doesn't have to be as close to the hoop as Embiid does to score efficiently, from what we've seen. But going up against Karl Anthony Towns defensively, Karl Anthony Towns is a much better perimeter player that can beat him off the dribble, and that can he can switch on. He has to chase around the perimeter for like closeout threes and things like that. Jokic isn't as good in those areas, and also Karl Anthony Towns driving to the rim and getting vertical. Jokic is not. That's probably his weakest link in on defense is verticality and getting up in the air and contesting shots. He's good at contesting grounded shots. He has quick hands, smart, like he's just a smart player in that way, and he can affect passing lanes and do all that kind of stuff, but he cannot protect the rim when a player has gone aerial. Like that is not, he can't do that. So that's why Karl Anthony Towns beats him offensively, is because Karl Anthony Towns is athletic and long and can hit threes really well and take him off the dribble. So yeah, it's kind of like a rock, paper, scissors that's been happening the past really 2 seasons. Jokic, Embiid, and Cat. Yeah, and then there's AD though, who doesn't typically, so he plays center decent amount, but typically he's starting and closing as the 4 the past couple seasons. So when Jokic and Davis go up against each other, I think Davis presents a lot of problems for Jokic, but not in the way that people have been saying. People have been saying that AD is going to back down Jokic and post him up and score that way, which I don't see that. Like obviously AD can get that over anybody to some extent, but I don't see that really being the best option for Anthony Davis. The best option for Anthony Davis is the opposite of what I've been saying is the best for Anthony Davis in all the series prior to this. All the series prior to this, I was saying he needs to go post up. He needs to get in the paint and post up and score that way. Maybe not as much in the Portland series because Yusuf Nurkic is a good interior defender, but especially in the Rockets series. The other thing though, is for this series though, I would say his best option is to actually catch it at the perimeter. To go in isolation against Jokic, to score in isolation against Jokic, is to catch it at the perimeter or at the elbow, and mainly I think better at the perimeter just because he has more of a runway that way, and beat Jokic off the dribble. That's really what he's going to be. I think is going to be his best option. If guys collapse in and help on that drive to the rim, AD's a gifted enough playmaker, I think, to hit KCP or Danny Green or Markieff Morris in the corner, and get the offense going that way. And also, what I've been talking about for the past forever since Anthony Davis, it came out that Anthony Davis was going to Lakers, was the LeBron and AD pick and roll, which needs to happen more for the Lakers if they want to win, if they want to ensure their victory. They got away with the past 2 series not really having to use it. I don't know if that means that they're trying to save it or something, like they think people are going to figure it out or something like that. I don't know, but the way that Gobert hurt Jokic so much in that first series and how Gobert averaged like 18, 19 points a game in that series was the pick and roll. Gobert is long and pretty athletic for his size and can catch lobs, and Jokic, being the monkey in the middle, could not contest lobs worth a darn. So having AD as probably the best lob finisher in the history of the game, I might say, he's as good as anybody else. I don't see why you wouldn't use that. What is Jokic supposed to do against that? And you run him off the floor, basically. Like that's where I see people, like, I understand people saying Jokic is a defensive liability. I don't disagree with that, but I hate it when they say complete zero defensively or try to make statements like that, because there are situations that you can have Jokic on the floor and be a positive defender. Like there's a team that you can build around him and a way to use him on the floor that he brings out his strengths as a defender. But there are weaknesses that he has that you can exploit if there's holes in the team that Jokic is on. So obviously, I think using LeBron and AD pick and roll and giving the ball to AD and having him attack off the dribble are really your best options for that, I think. This is a series that AD needs to win. LeBron's LeBron, so he's going to do something, but I trust Jeremy Grant. That might sound crazy, but I trust Jeremy Grant to guard him at least semi-capably and really make it where AD is the one that is like the most responsible for, like, he has the best opportunities. I think that is what's probably going to happen. If I don't see LeBron if he tries to back down Jeremy Grant, that might be a tool for him, I guess. But I think Grant is long and athletic and capable. Has lateral quickness to stay in front of LeBron. And yeah, I trust him, I guess is what I'm saying. But yeah, I don't necessarily trust Jokic against Anthony Davis. Also, I want to point out to the people that have been talking really bad about Jokic on defense, I want to point out, ever since Gary Harris has gotten back into the lineup, Jokic has been actually doing pretty well on defense. Like, I don't know if people watched the game last night, but Jokic was doing actually really well on defense, especially for him. But he was playing really hard. He blocked a few shots. He was closing out and contesting threes really well. He was just playing hard, and he's been doing that really ever since they went down 3-1 against Utah. Is really when he started plugging up those holes and started playing that way. So, and that's exactly when Gary Harris came back too. So I don't think that's a coincidence that we were down 3-1. Gary Harris came back. We came back. People were saying that he wasn't playing well offensively in that series, and people have been saying that he was bad all year long. People just look at the stat sheet though, and they say that. I've watched Nuggets game all year long. Gary Harris is one of our most important players. He takes the hardest backcourt assignment, and a lot of times he guards, like how he was guarding Paul George in this series. His hands and ability to cause turnovers, get us extra possessions, happens so frequently. I was just thinking about it in Game 6. There was literally 2 in a row. So like Gary Harris strips somebody. I don't remember who it was, but he strips somebody. We take it down the floor. We mess up in transition. We don't get what we need to get done. And it starts going back the other way. And then Gary Harris just runs up to the guy who has the ball now again, who's just crossed half court, and strips him too. I think it was Patrick Beverley or Lou Williams. Actually, it was Lou Williams, I think. But he just takes it and gives it to us, and we don't make it happen. And then he's like, all right, I'll get it back. And he just does it again. And that time we did score in transition. It's like just plays like that. He just gets us extra possessions. He gets stops defensively, even if it's not a turnover. He'll just get stops. Gary Harris is super, super vital. And in this series, you started seeing him hit his threes. And that's really what changed from Game 4 on. Once we went down 3-1 was, I think, Gary Harris, on top of being the defender that he has been, started hitting threes. We're facing a better team now. What Gary Harris was providing wasn't enough anymore to tip the scales in our favor. But then once he added that offensive dimension to stretch the floor and hit threes, that's really what started changing for us. And also the Clippers weren't making the adjustments they needed to make, and Jokic was just playing harder and harder every game. And Murray started turning it on too in the last game. So all that stuff happened too. But Gary Harris, I don't think should be underappreciated in this way. Like, people do it. I don't know. He didn't get any votes for all defensive team. I think he should have been one of the top guards right outside of it, or maybe even on it. I could see him being on there over Jimmy Butler, to be honest. I think he should get more recognition in that department, I guess. But I guess what I was saying before with Jokic playing hard on the defensive end, he did that. He played well. So people need to give him, I think, credit for that as well. Yeah, like Jamal Murray said in the last post-game interview, like, give the Nuggets some respect. The media has not been, I don't know. I think people believe in them to a certain degree, but like I'm just saying some of the takes that some people have, some of the things they say about some of the guys on the team, I just don't agree with the takes because I've watched them all year and I know what they are. I know what they're capable of, what they do. Um, so yeah, I think that's basically it that I'm going to be talking about with that series. I guess maybe I should keep going with Lakers and Nuggets in Western Conference Finals. Lost my spot trying to give Gary Harris some credit, but yeah, I think obviously Lakers are the more obvious pick, but there's ways for the Nuggets to win if the Lakers are reluctant to post or to get the ball to AD. If AD is reluctant to attack the basket like he has been, and if they're reluctant to use the LeBron and AD pick and roll, and if Rondo fizzles out a little bit, yeah, and if all those things go right and Jokic can score, I think, another thing I didn't touch on. I touched on Jokic versus Embiid or Jokic versus AD with Jokic guarding him, but I didn't touch on the other way around. I think I think Gobert is probably the best person in the league to guard Jokic, really. And if it's not him, it's probably AD because AD kind of provides a hybrid of the things that you want. Like against Gobert, Jokic really turned into a jump shooter. Like he turned into, Gobert was not coming out to the 3-point line because he's too slow to recover if he gets blown by or if something happens where he has to go back in the paint where he lives. So Jokic was able to get a lot of open threes. Anthony Davis, however, he's big enough, long enough to contest Jokic in almost the same way, not as well, I would say. If Gobert's just towering with his arms over Jokic, making his shot super hard. Anthony Davis isn't going to be quite as substantial in that department, but Anthony Davis's ability to close out and chase him on the perimeter, stay with him, and not give him open jump shots might be just another advantage that tips the scale in Anthony Davis's favor. So to make him maybe equal in effectiveness to guard Jokic. So yeah, I guess we'll see with that. But I guess on paper, Anthony Davis should be able to lock up Jokic for the most part. Jokic is probably going to make some tough shots and stuff like he does, but yeah. But the thing though is Jamal Murray, which I think that he could have a really good series this series. And like I said before, how I'm going to be hesitant to use my card of hoping for another good game from him. I might use it right away. Honestly, I just got done talking about having to save it and stuff, but honestly, this series, if he continues with his hot streak, this is another series where he can light it up, I think. It's not going to be as easy as Utah because AD's going to be able to not, he's going to be able to chase him on the screens, not have to drop in the pick and roll every time, but then that opens things up for Jokic. So, yeah, we have moves. We have things that we can do in those scenarios with the Jokic and Murray pick and roll. Either Murray's scoring or Jokic is scoring in that situation pretty often. I'd say I think that can happen. And if Jamal Murray is just hitting his shots, hitting crazy things like he has been in Utah and when he's had opportunities against the Clippers, he can show out somewhere in between that he did in Clippers versus Utah series. So somewhere in between those two productions. So yeah, I'm gonna hope for him just to have a really good series. That's what I'm gonna say. I hope that he lights it up this series, has like at least 3 or 4 games where he's just, having those Jamal Murray games that he's had. Yeah, that's what I'm going to say. That's really going to be a big key for us. Also, I don't know for sure. I haven't seen any new information about Will Barton, but there have been talks of him coming back. So that's going to be another thing that, he provides at least a little something on the defensive end. And Will Barton, for sure, all season has been our best option as a third option, a third best scorer, or third guy to go to in isolation. And I think that's gonna be huge for us. Because then that provides so much more for Murray in this series. I think when you have, if you're paying too much attention to Murray, having Barton as somebody that can beat you offensively if he comes back and is healthy and up to par with what he has been, that's going to be a big thing. So hopefully we get Barton back and throw some stuff in there. I don't know if we should start him. Maybe we should. Maybe yeah. I against the Lakers depends on whether they're using their centers. And that's another thing that I was wanting to talk about with this series too. That is a way that Nuggets could have another advantage. Is I think if they play their centers, like don't play AD at center, I think is going to be good for us. Probably just because that gives us more to do offensively. I think Jokic can score better against Howard and McGee than he can against AD. And also, Jokic is going to be way easier to have Jokic out there defensively if he's guarding Dwight or JaVale. I'd say maybe not because those guys are really good rim runners too. But yeah, I guess we'll see. But yeah, official prediction is the Lakers. I should probably move on now to the Eastern Conference Finals that happened last night. That game was crazy. Well, it was just really entertaining from start to finish. Bam Adebayo, like I said, I think leading up to this series that he was going to be an X factor, and he was. He played super good defense. Obviously, capped it off with that probably one of the best blocks of all time in the playoffs. Just completely blocked a game-winning dunk attempt from Tatum at in the closing seconds of the game. Was pretty ridiculous, and how he just completely just stretched out and caught it right right as it was trying to go into the rim, and his whole arm was like behind his body, just kind of like a freak block, and it was just ridiculous. Tyler Hero, being the animal that he is, just oozing with confidence, hitting one of the biggest threes in the game, right towards the end. Jimmy Butler hitting a huge three at the end of regulation. Yeah, and it was a lot of what I talked about. Like I said, Jimmy Butler and Tyler Hero are going to make shots down the stretch. Like they're going to not be afraid to, and they did. Goran Dragic, I thought, has been having a tremendous postseason. I thought that would continue, and that did. He was super good, especially in the first half. And yeah, and I picked Miami to win. I am keeping that pick. I think it's going to be a little bit harder than I thought. Well, I knew this series was going to be close, but I think it's definitely probably going to go six or seven. Tatum did better last night than I thought he was going to do. But Kemba was able to score quite a bit. Also, one thing that I hadn't given Celtics enough credit for, with the Heat this season, especially in the postseason, they've been awesome to watch just because they're like, I think the best team in the league that I've seen this season at sharing the ball, at moving the ball, getting the right guy with the right shot. They've just been so like fun to watch in that way. Like they just make the right play so often. And at the start of game one, they looked really awkward. Like they didn't know, the ball was moving too much. They were really over moving and not really finding a good shot. And I think that was just because I think the Celtics have the best defense in the NBA. I really think that. In the bubble, at least, the stats bear that out too, that Celtics have been the most efficient defense. But the way, I would say with Miami, they have better one-on-one defenders. They have better lockdown guys that you can put on a star to slow them down. Boston has enough of that with Smart and Brown and even Tatum. But on top of that, they, as a unit, are just so good defensively. So good at neutralizing things going up there's I knew that they were the best transition defense in the league all season long and in the bubble as well, but just watching them in this first Miami game against a team that really knows how to move in transition and also just move the ball in a half court set, how they just neutralize the ball and close up all these holes, close up all these things, that opportunities that the Heat usually generate with that ball movement. It was just interesting to watch. It was like stressful, like how everywhere the ball went, it was like being suffocated. Like they're just running around putting out fires everywhere the ball went, and how long they are too. In that way, like there's so many long wings on that team. Marcus Smart is really long for the guard that he is. So I think this series is gonna be really good. And yeah, I didn't give Celtics enough credit there. That they're honestly, I think, the best defense in the NBA. And they're getting Hayward back probably, and Hayward provides more ball handling options, less reliance on Marcus Smart to keep his hot streak up and hit him hitting threes and honestly taking probably more shots than he should, but he's been hitting them. So adding Hayward to that takes, I think, a lot more offensive load off of some of those other guys that you don't want to have offensive load, like Brad Wanamaker and Marcus Smart and Semi Ojeleye, those guys. So yeah, but I'm still taking Miami. And I can't change that pick, but I don't want to either. So, and also I just am rooting for Miami. I really like this team. I really like their guys. I just like how they came out of nowhere. Like at the beginning of the season, I think I had them as the 6th seed in the East, maybe maybe even 7th. I don't know. It was something like that. I feel like though, like all the talk about them was like, watch out for Miami. They might be a feisty, low seed that might give somebody a little bit of a scare in the first round. Like that was like the extent of like what we thought Miami could do this season. But they're in the Eastern Conference Finals and they're up 1-0, and they're 10-1 now, right? Or 9-1? Yeah, they're 9-1 so far in the postseason. Have the best record in the postseason so far, and they haven't played bum teams. I mean, Indiana was like not terrible. Indiana was the higher seed going into it, but even with Sabonis, I thought Miami was probably the better team. But when Indiana had Sabonis go down, it was pretty easy. Just chalk up the victory for Miami. But yeah, Bucks. I was not expecting that to go 5, and it could have easily gone 4 if Chris Middleton didn't just completely summon his inner Kobe in game 4. Yeah. After Giannis went down. So, yeah, that could have easily gone 4. They could be easily 9-0 right now. But, yeah. I'm just really excited for both these series. Either way, any way this shakes out, I'd be happy with the finals. Like this finals matchup, Lakers-Celtics, really, nice traditional rivalry, fun matchup, I think. Lakers-Heat, obviously that would be cool. LeBron going up against Eric Spoelstra and Pat Riley and his former franchise that he was with for those 4 years. I think that would be cool, and also just to see the Heat in the finals would be cool. And Jimmy Butler has had his way against LeBron previously in the postseason. Before when Jimmy Butler was first coming into his own in the league, and then obviously anybody the Nuggets play, I'll be happy for the Nuggets being there. All of those matchups be super interesting, way better, even better than I could have thought. This could have shaken out, more entertaining, I guess. So, yeah, that's really cool. I think I'm going to close it off with just going to touch on those teams, the all NBA teams. I'm going to look at those first. I'm going to go through in the order of who got the most points. So, yeah. And then I might go into, does it show more people that got yeah, okay, it does show more players that got votes. So I'm going to go through those a bit too, just like I did with all the defensive teams. I won't spend too much time on it though. Okay, so first forward on the All NBA first team, so the guy with the most votes, which actually they're tied. So the two forwards who both got the most votes are Giannis and LeBron, who are both exactly who I had. Yeah, so exactly what I had so far. Then the third guy, the guy with the third most votes at guard was James Harden. So he's the first guard, and then got the fourth most is center, and that's Anthony Davis. Fifth most was at guard Luka Doncic, so he's the second guard. And that's exactly what I had. So James Harden had 2 third team votes. Yeah, it's interesting. But I guess it's not as bad as the all defensive teams that we looked at and some of the people that got votes and where they got votes. But um, yeah, I think this is exactly what I had though. Other than I had Luka over James, so I had Luka as the first guard and James Harden as the second guard. I think, pretty sure. But yeah, other than that is the same. Second team, the first guy is the first forward, Kawhi Leonard. He was mine as well. Center, Jokic, Nikola Jokic. That's who I had on my second team also. First guard was Dame. That was my first guard. Second guard, Chris Paul. That was my second guard. So all chalk so far. And then Pascal Siakam was the second forward, who I don't think was on my I'm pretty sure I had Jason Tatum. Yeah, Jason Tatum was on my second team. Pretty positive. Yeah, I would bet a lot of money on that. Yeah, Jason Tatum was on my second team. And then so yeah, moving on to the third team. Jason Tatum is the first forward on there. So yeah, I basically just switch around Tatum and Siakam for me. Really, that was the first guy that I was on different teams for me. And then Jimmy Butler. See, he's at forward. I said last episode that I bet you guys that he's going to be at forward on this, which I would disagree with. Like, he should be. If you're putting, Ben Simmons is on here at guard. If you're putting Ben Simmons as a guard, how is Jimmy Butler not a guard? I just don't like, especially defensively. Like, I care about less about it on here, on NBA teams, but defensively, shouldn't you be at the position of like the people you guard? Like, what guards does Ben Simmons guard? Why is he a guard on the all defensive teams? I just don't understand. Like, I put him on there just because he was eligible for it, and it made me get my top 5 best defenders in a better spread. But so I kind of went against what I thought he should be listed at just for getting my top 5. But yeah, Jimmy Butler, I think, is more of a guard than Ben Simmons is on the defensive end, and offensively, obviously Ben Simmons probably is. He's more of a ball handler, more of a passer, but Jimmy Butler is, on his team, the primary ball handler. So offensively, if that's what you want to call a point guard, is the primary ball handler, that's what Jimmy Butler is. So, and defensively, he guards mainly like forwards and guards high, like 2 and 3. Those are the guys he guards usually. And he guards a lot of point guards too. Like I know last night against the Celtics, he was guarding he was guarding Tatum, I think. Pretty sure. But if that was the Hornets they were going up against, but like last year's Hornets, he would have been guarding Kemba. Like, I guarantee you. Like, since Kemba was really the only threat on that Charlotte team, and that when the Sixers played them last season, Jimmy Butler was primary defender on Kemba. He's guarding a 5'11" point guard. That's super fast and shifty. Like, Ben Simmons doesn't do that. Like, Ben Simmons is capable of staying in front of guys pretty well, but like that's not his assignment. You know what I'm talking about? So yeah, I guess I'll be done with that rant. But yeah, so Tatum, Butler are the 2 forwards. Center is Rudy Gobert, who I had there also, but it was a bit of a controversy for me because I was also thinking a little bit of Bam and Sabonis. Were also the guys I thought about, but I did put Rudy Gobert on there. And then the guards are Ben Simmons and Russell Westbrook, which, just like the all defensive teams, the last 2 guards were the guys that I didn't have on there, and that's the same thing here. The guards I had on here I had Jimmy Butler at guard, so that's one of them, and I had Chris Middleton at the second forward spot on here, and then I had Bradley Beal as the other guard. Which I stand by that. I really do. Other than I kind of get, if you want to move Butler to the forward and bring in Simmons as a guard, then I'm okay with Simmons being in there over Chris Middleton, maybe, but it's close. Chris Middleton had a really good year. But yeah, that would probably be the only way. Russell Westbrook had a good last half of the season, really good, I should say, but I thought Bradley Beal was better. He just had a better overall season. And Ben Simmons missed like 12 games, so it's in a shortened season is a little bit of a concern. But anyways, yeah, those were my picks, and this is how it did shake out. Was those guys there, and then I heard a lot of like just seeing when it got released, like a lot of comments on it on the Score app was what I was looking at it on. Most of the comments were like, "Where's Booker?" and like, "This is trash list. Booker's not on here." But nobody cared about Bradley Beal. Like, but I feel like so many people were going solely based off of the 8 seeding games, which this voting has zero to do with. Those seeding games have nothing to do with these votes. Like these votes were for the regular season before COVID, before the stopping of the season. So you're telling me that Devin Booker had a better season than Bradley Beal did up until the shutdown? I don't think so. I think Bradley Beal is probably the guy that deserved that spot. But yeah. Okay, so moving on. Some of the other players receiving votes. The forwards, there's Chris Middleton, which, yeah, I just got done talking about him. He had 10 second team votes. Wow. And 52 third team votes. So, yeah, 52 people thought of it the same way I did, or at least for, where he was placed. But, and then Paul George had votes, which I think is interesting. He missed like 30-something% of the season. And really didn't play super well while he was in there. Like, he didn't really play even better than Chris Middleton did. But okay, he had 2 second team votes and 1 third team. And then Brandon Ingram had 1 second team vote and 2 third team. Who Brandon Ingram was also another guy I considered putting on there. I talked about in the episode I did about all NBA teams, one of the honorable mentions. And then here's centers. Embiid got a lot of votes for some reason. He had 3 first team votes, 14 second team votes, and 22 third team votes. I guess, these are all the people that I'd never hear of, that I never hear talking, that don't vote based on how much of the season you played. Because obviously a lot of people were still okay with putting Embiid on an All-NBA team. Even though he missed over 33% of the season, I think. I think it was like 32% of the season, which is a lot. Like, that's a lot, and you shouldn't be eligible, I think, for maybe eligible, but it's a big detraction in what you should end up at on voting and stuff. Bam Adebayo had 26 13 votes. That's it. That's all that he had. But yeah, he was listed as a center on here. So, Bam Adebayo would have been my first guy left off, really for the center spot. And Sabonis should be on here, in my opinion, but he's not. He's not one of these guys getting votes. And then the other guys were Andre Drummond, who had a second team vote for some reason. There's somebody that really likes Andre Drummond. like he's getting like 1 or 2 votes in like the defensive player of the year, and then defensive teams, and then which is 1 vote for second team All NBA. I think there's like 1 or 2 people that just are like, yeah, Andre Drummond. I love rebounding or something, but Karl-Anthony Towns got 2 third team, which he missed a lot of the season too. I think even more than Embiid, actually. So that's weird. Brook Lopez got a third team All-NBA vote, which I think is kind of nuts, but okay. Yeah, and Sabonis isn't on here for some reason. I think Sabonis should be on there. And Vucevic over Lopez and Towns and Drummond, really. But whatever. So then there's guards. Bradley Beal had the most of guards that wasn't on the NBA teams, which I agree with. That's cool. Oh my gosh. Maybe that's what people were commenting on. Devin Booker got 0 votes. Yeah, I understand that frustration. Like, he should have got votes for sure. I don't think he should have made it up on there over Bradley Beal, but I think he should have been at least in the other guys receiving votes. But anyways, the rest of the guards are Kyle Lowry, Trae Young, Donovan Mitchell, and Kemba Walker, who are all guys I touched on when I made my episode. But Devin Booker would have been on here over Trae Young for sure. Probably also over Lowry. Probably around the same level as Mitchell for me. Probably a little over Kemba also. But yeah, I think it should have been Booker and Mitchell at the top of these guys, excluding Beal, obviously, because I had him on my team. But yeah, and then Simmons and Russell, I think, were also probably around that same level as Mitchell and Booker. Maybe a little bit higher for both of them. But yeah, that's how mine would have shaken out. But that's how this was. So yeah, not terrible by any means actually. But yeah, so that's the way it went, and so I was actually pretty not bad accuracy wise on that. Pretty sure I had just one guy flipped around from second to third team with another guy, and then I just had the guards different on the third team, so pretty good. But and then so rookie teams. This one I was really surprised that I was accurate at all because I did not really, people don't really talk about rookie teams as much, and so I didn't really know what like other people were thinking really with defensive team and All NBA. All NBA was easier, even though I didn't listen to people talk about it beforehand, just because they're the best people in the league, and that was a little bit easier to know what who the best people in the league are, and so yeah, all defensive teams I did hear like a little bit of some other like Zach Lowe and some people that were talking about it. I didn't do exactly what they did. I had my own opinions and stuff that I brought to it, but for sure I had probably even more differences with them than what it actually turned out being. But yeah, all rookie, I was really surprised that I was accurate because I really just looked up like a list of them. I knew it was going based off of what I saw from them this season, but also like based off of their minutes that they played and stats and stuff like that on Basketball Reference. So I was looking at a lot of that stuff. But it was really similar. One thing I'll point out right away, I just excluded Zion from all rookie teams just because he only played 19 games. So I'm not gonna put him on there. That's just my personal thing. So yeah, but he's on the all rookie first team as the second forward. There's Ja Morant is the rookie of the year, and he was the first guard. Then Kendrick Nunn is the second guard with the Heat. Brandon Clark with the Grizzlies, a teammate of Morant, was the first forward. Zion was the second forward, and then Eric Paschall was the center. Who I think Eric Paschall was the center on my second team, and Brandon Clark was my center on the all-rookie first team. But yeah, I don't remember who I had on the first team other than that. I think it was probably like Matisse Thybulle or maybe even PJ Washington or somebody like that. But yeah, the second team is Tyler Hero at guard, Terrence Davis at the next guard, or I guess at the first forward. Yeah, because then Kobe White would be the other guard. And then PJ Washington as forward and Rui as basically the small five, I guess. But Rui Hachimura. So I had all those guys on there too, other than Kobe White. I had Kobe White switched out for Matisse Thybulle. And I had Zion not on here. So who would have been the other rookie that was on here that isn't on here? I guess who else was getting votes? RJ Barrett. I think it was RJ Barrett. Or DeAndre Hunter, one of them. Probably DeAndre Hunter. Actually, I'm sure it's probably RJ Barrett. Yeah, RJ Barrett was probably on my second or maybe even first team. But other guys receiving votes though, there was RJ, Matisse Thybulle, Darius Garland from Cleveland, DeAndre Hunter in Atlanta, Michael Porter Jr. in Denver actually had 9 second team votes, which is interesting. He only played like 11 or 12 minutes a game. But I think, if he played the same amount of minutes as some of these other guys, I'm sure he would have been on here. But Jackson Hayes, who I love. I love Jackson Hayes. He's a really explosive rim runner in New Orleans. I'm excited for him. And then Cam Johnson in Phoenix, who has been a pleasant surprise as a rookie this season in Phoenix. And then Cody Martin, one of the Martin twins from Nevada, who are both on the Hornets, I believe. But yeah, those are all the guys that got votes. Not too much to go on in that. Rookie teams aren't, the most exciting thing, but it is exciting to see, the young players and the way their careers shaping out and where it's going in the future. So it was cool to see that. And I was surprised by being pretty close to what actually ended up on there and what I predicted. So yeah, I think that'll be it for this episode though. I don't think that I had much more to say. There might have been some things that I missed, but I'll probably get to them another time. Yeah, thanks for listening. If you enjoyed the episode, please press like and subscribe and all that kind of stuff. And if you're on Spotify, please follow the Spotify feed. But yeah, as always, thank you guys for listening, and I'll talk to you guys next time.